The cowboy bought the most beautiful Apache woman, and the next day she became his bride. The sun rose slowly over the wide land of the American Southwest, painting the sky with soft orange and pale gold. The land looked calm and endless, but life here was not easy. This was a hard time, a time when power ruled over kindness and many people suffered quietly. Small towns were scattered far apart and law was weak. Strong men survived, while the weak were often forgotten. The young Apache woman had learned this truth too early in life. She had once lived among her people, surrounded by familiar faces, songs, and stories passed down by elders. Her world had been full of meaning. Every mountain had a name, every wind carried a memory. But that world was torn apart by conflict and cruelty. One violent day changed everything. Her family was gone, her village destroyed, and she was taken far from the land that knew her heart. Now she stood among strangers, treated not as a person but as something to be claimed. Her hands were tied, not tightly, but enough to remind her that freedom was no longer hers. Dust clung to her long dark hair, and her eyes, though tired, still held a quiet fire. Many men looked at her, but none truly saw her. To them, she was only an object in a cruel system that had no room for mercy. She did not cry. She had learned that tears only pleased those who enjoyed power. Instead, she stood straight, even when fear pressed heavily on her chest. She did not know what would happen next, only that her life was no longer her own. Every sound around her felt loud, the stamping of boots, the low voices of men, the harsh laughter that made her stomach tighten. Not far away stood a cowboy, watching everything in silence. He was not a young man anymore. Years of hard work under the sun had shaped his body and carved lines into his face. His hat shaded tired eyes that had seen too much loss. He had no family left, no place he truly called home except the small ranch where he slept after long days of labor. His life was simple, but lonely. He had come into town only to sell cattle supplies and rest his horse. He had not planned to stay long, and certainly not to witness something that would change his life forever. At first, he tried to ignore what was happening. He told himself it was not his business. This land was full of injustice, and one man could not fix it. But when his eyes fell on the young woman, something inside him stirred. It was not desire, and it was not curiosity. It was a deep discomfort, a feeling he could not shake. He noticed how still she stood, how she refused to bow her head even when spoken to harshly. He saw fear in her eyes, yes, but also strength. He had seen cruelty before. He had seen men hurt others without regret, yet something about this moment felt heavier. Maybe it was the way she was treated as if she had no voice, or maybe it was the memory of his own past, of times when he too had been powerless. He remembered losing his parents young, being forced to survive alone, learning that kindness was rare but precious. The cowboy listened as men talked loudly around her, speaking as if she could not understand or feel. Each word felt like a blow. He clenched his jaw, his hands tightening at his sides. He wanted to walk away. He told himself again that this was not his fight. But his feet did not move. Instead, he stepped closer. The men noticed him then. They recognized him as a ranch worker, someone with a little money but not much power. Some laughed, thinking he was only curious. Others looked annoyed, guarding what they believed belonged to them. The cowboy spoke calmly, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. He did not argue. He did not shout. He simply acted. He offered what money he had. It was more than he could easily spare, money meant for repairs and supplies. His hands shook slightly as he counted it out, knowing that this choice would change everything. The men were surprised but pleased. To them, it was just another deal. To him, it felt like swallowing fire. When the exchange was done, silence filled the space between him and the young woman. She looked at him carefully, unsure what kind of man he was. Her life had taught her not to trust quickly. She had been moved from place to place, promised safety only to find pain. She expected nothing good. The cowboy met her gaze and then looked away, ashamed. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man standing inside a broken system, trying to do one right thing without knowing if it was truly right. He loosened the rope around her hands immediately, his movements slow so as not to frighten her. "You're safe," he said quietly, though he was not fully sure it was true. She did not answer. She did not know his language well, but his tone mattered more than words. It was not harsh. It was not demanding. Still, fear stayed close to her heart. She followed him because she had no other choice. They left town together as the sun climbed higher. People watched them, whispering, judging, guessing. Some mocked him, others warned him. He ignored them all. His focus stayed on the path ahead and the woman walking beside him. The journey to his ranch was long and quiet. Dust rose with every step, and the wind carried the smell of dry earth. He walked a short distance ahead, giving her space, never reaching for her. Several times he slowed his pace so she would not struggle to keep up. These small acts did not go unnoticed. By the time they reached the ranch, the sky had begun to soften again, moving toward evening. The cabin was small, built of worn wood, standing alone against the wide land. It was not much, but it was clean and solid. To him it was enough. To her it was unknown. He showed her inside, pointing to water, to food, to a place where she could rest. He spoke gently, using simple words and gestures. He made it clear she was free to move within the space, that he would not harm her. Then, to prove his words, he stepped outside and slept near the fire, leaving her alone inside the cabin. That night, neither of them slept well. She sat quietly, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the land. Every shadow made her tense. Her body was tired, but her mind would not rest. She wondered what this man wanted, what tomorrow would bring. She thought of her people, of songs she could no longer sing aloud. Outside, the cowboy stared up at the stars. The same stars he had seen every night of his life now felt different. He questioned his actions again and again. Had he truly helped her, or had he only delayed her suffering? He knew one thing for certain: he could not undo what had happened, but he could choose what happened next. As the fire burned low, he made a silent promise to himself. Whatever the world had done to her, he would not add to it. He would treat her with respect, even if the rest of the world did not. He did not know how, and he did not know where this path would lead. All he knew was that when morning came, nothing would ever be the same. Morning came slowly, like it was unsure whether it was welcome. Pale light slipped through the small cabin window and rested on the wooden floor. The young Apache woman had not slept much. She sat quietly on the edge of the bed, listening. The land outside was unfamiliar, and every sound made her body tense. Birds called in the distance. The wind moved gently through the grass. These sounds were softer than the noises she was used to, but fear does not leave easily. She stood up carefully and walked toward the door. It was not locked. That surprised her. She opened it just a little and looked outside. The cowboy was already awake. He stood near the water pump, washing his face. His movements were slow and calm, like he did not want to disturb the peace of the morning. When he noticed her at the door, he stepped back and lifted his hand slightly, showing he meant no harm. He nodded once, respectful and quiet. "Good morning," he said softly. She did not answer. She only watched him. Words still felt dangerous to her. In the past, words had often been followed by pain or broken promises. She stayed silent, holding the doorframe as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. He did not push her to speak. Instead, he turned away and walked a few steps toward the small table outside. On it, he placed bread and a cup of water. He pointed to it gently, then stepped back again. "For you," he said. Hunger reminded her that she was still human, that her body needed care even when her heart was tired. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped outside. Every step felt like a test. When nothing bad happened, she sat on a low stool and took the food. She ate quietly, her eyes still watching him, ready to move if she needed to. The cowboy busied himself with small tasks around the ranch. He fed the horse, fixed a loose board, cleaned tools. He did not stare at her. He did not ask questions. He allowed silence to exist between them without forcing it to break. This confused her more than anger ever could. In her experience, men either demanded attention or showed cruelty. This man did neither. As the day moved forward, the sun rose higher, warming the land. The woman watched him from a distance. She noticed how he spoke gently to the horse, how he worked steadily without anger. She noticed that when he passed near her, he always left space between them. These small details mattered. Still, fear did not disappear. She did not know how long this calm would last. By midday, he brought her a simple cloth and pointed toward a small water area behind the cabin, letting her know she could wash if she wished. Then he walked away, giving her privacy. She hesitated, then followed, her body aching from days of travel and stress. The cool water brought some relief, washing dust and sweat from her skin. For a moment, she felt almost normal. When she returned, he was sitting on the steps, repairing a boot. He looked up briefly, nodded again, then returned to his work. No questions, no commands. Inside the cabin, she explored quietly. There was little inside, just a table, 2 chairs, a bed, and shelves with simple tools and supplies. It was not a rich man's home. It was a working man's place, built for survival, not comfort. That somehow made it feel more honest. As afternoon faded, clouds gathered in the sky. A strong wind passed through the land, carrying dust and the promise of rain. The woman stood near the window, watching the sky change. She thought of her people, of storms that once brought joy and stories shared around fires. Now memories felt like sharp stones inside her chest. The cowboy noticed her watching the sky. He stepped closer, still careful not to crowd her. He pointed upward and spoke slowly. "Storm coming," he said. "Strong one." She understood enough to nod. The wind grew louder and soon rain began to fall, heavy and sudden. The sound filled the cabin, beating against the roof and ground. For a moment she flinched, memories rising without warning. Her breathing quickened. He noticed immediately. Without touching her, he spoke calmly, his voice low and steady. "It's all right, you're safe here." She did not know if she believed him, but the tone of his voice helped slow her breath. She sat down, wrapping her arms around herself. He stayed nearby, but not too close, respecting the space she clearly needed. As the storm passed, the world outside looked cleaner, softer. The air smelled fresh. Evening approached, and with it came a new kind of tension. Night had always been dangerous for her. Darkness hid many things. He prepared a simple meal and placed it on the table. He waited for her to sit first, then sat across from her, leaving space between them. They ate quietly. At one point, he tried to speak again, choosing his words carefully. "My name is Thomas," he said, pointing to himself. She looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly she spoke her name. Her voice was soft but clear. It was the first word she had offered freely since arriving. He repeated it gently, trying to say it correctly. When he struggled, he gave a small, embarrassed smile. For the first time, she felt something shift inside her, not trust yet, but curiosity. After the meal, he stood and pointed toward the bed, then toward the fire outside, making it clear where he would sleep again. He did not need to explain further. His actions spoke loudly. That night she slept a little more. Dreams still came, heavy and confusing, but when she woke, nothing bad had happened. The door was still unlocked. The cabin was still quiet. Days passed like this. Each day followed a similar pattern. He worked. She watched. Slowly she began to help with small tasks, offering gestures instead of words. She fetched water. She cleaned. She learned the shape of this new place, where the sun rose, where it set, how the land breathed. The cowboy noticed her efforts and thanked her, even when she barely understood the words. He never ordered her. He never raised his voice. When she made mistakes, he corrected them gently, showing instead of scolding. But outside the ranch, the world was not kind. One afternoon, while he was repairing a fence, voices approached. Men from the nearby town rode closer, their eyes sharp and unwelcoming. The woman saw them first and felt fear rush through her body. Her hands shook as she backed away. The cowboy noticed her fear and turned quickly. His body tensed, his face hardening in a way she had not seen before. He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the approaching men. The men spoke loudly, their words filled with judgment and suspicion. They questioned him, questioned her presence, questioned his choices. Their looks toward her made her feel small again, like she was no longer safe. The cowboy answered firmly but calmly. He did not insult them. He did not threaten. He simply made it clear that she was under his protection and that they were not welcome to interfere. His stance was steady, unshaken. After a tense moment, the men left, their words lingering in the air long after they were gone. The woman's legs felt weak. She sank onto a chair, her heart racing. The cowboy turned to her, concern clear in his eyes. He wanted to say something that would take the fear away, but he knew words were not enough. Instead, he did something simple. He sat down at a distance and waited. He let the silence stretch, giving her time to calm herself. When her breathing slowed, he spoke quietly. "I won't let them hurt you," he said. "Not here." She looked at him then, really looked at him. For the first time, she saw not just a man, but a choice he was making again and again. A difficult choice. A risky one. That night, as the stars appeared once more, both of them understood something important. This place was not hidden from the world forever. Danger could return. Whispers could grow louder. And soon a decision would have to be made, not forced, not rushed, but faced honestly. As the fire burned low, the woman stared into the flames, thinking deeply. And the cowboy, watching the same fire, realized that protecting her would require more than silence and good intentions. The calm they had built was fragile, and the world beyond the ranch was already pressing closer. The next few days passed with a strange mix of calm and worry. On the surface, life at the ranch stayed quiet. The sun rose and set as it always did. The cowboy worked the land, repaired fences, and cared for the animals. The Apache woman helped where she could, slowly becoming more comfortable with the daily rhythm. Yet beneath that calm, both of them felt the pressure growing. The visit from the men had changed something. She no longer felt safe even in the open daylight. Every distant sound made her pause. Every shadow seemed to carry meaning. When the wind shifted suddenly, she would look toward the horizon, her heart tightening. The world had taught her that safety never lasted long. The cowboy noticed these changes. He saw how her eyes searched the land more often now, how her body stiffened when hoofbeats echoed in the distance, even when they belonged to his own horse. He understood that kindness alone could not protect her from a world full of fear and judgment. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in deep orange, he sat outside the cabin, thinking deeply. He knew the truth even if he did not want to face it. A woman like her, living openly on a ranch without protection in this land, would always be in danger. People talked. Rumors spread quickly in small towns, and once people believed they had the right to interfere, words could turn into actions. She sat nearby, weaving thin strands of grass together, a habit that helped calm her mind. She felt his gaze on her and looked up. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them looked away. He took a slow breath. "There's something we need to talk about," he said carefully, choosing each word as if it could break something fragile. She did not fully understand his sentence, but she understood his tone. It was serious, not angry, not demanding. She nodded slightly, showing she was listening. He stood and moved a little closer, still keeping distance. He pointed toward the distant town, then shook his head. He pointed toward the ranch, then placed his hand over his chest. "People," he said, "they won't leave you alone." Her fingers tightened around the grass in her hands. She understood enough to feel the weight of his meaning. She had lived long enough to know that people often took what they wanted without asking. He continued slowly, using simple words and gestures. Here, not safe forever, not like this. She lowered her gaze, her shoulders sinking. She had hoped, even briefly, that this place might be different, that she could disappear into the land and be forgotten. But the world did not forget so easily. He hesitated, then said the word that had been heavy in his mind for days. Marriage. She looked up sharply. He raised his hands quickly, shaking his head. Not force, he said. Your choice. He struggled to explain. He pointed to himself, then to her, then made a circle with his hands as if showing unity. He pointed toward the town again and crossed his arms firmly. Married, they won't touch you, he said. Law sees you as family. Her heart raced. The idea frightened her, not because of him, but because of everything the word represented. Marriage had always meant control in her world. It meant being trapped, owned, silenced. She stood up, backing away slowly. Fear rose in her eyes, not of him, but of the memory of all she had lost. Her breathing grew shallow. He saw her fear and stopped immediately. No, he said gently. You decide, I promise. He stepped back, giving her space, showing through his body language that she was free to say no. She turned away and walked toward the edge of the ranch, staring out at the land. The wind brushed against her face, carrying the scent of earth and grass. Her thoughts felt heavy and tangled. She thought of running, but running meant being alone again. It meant hiding, always hiding. It meant danger without shelter. She thought of staying as she was, but staying meant waiting for someone else to decide her fate. That night she barely slept. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds outside. The cowboy slept by the fire again, just as he always did. He had not pressured her. He had not asked again. The choice rested fully in her hands, and that scared her more than force ever had. Morning came quietly. She watched him prepare for the day, his movements familiar now. He treated her the same as always, no tension, no expectation. That consistency mattered. Later that day, another sign came. A rider passed near the ranch, slowing as he noticed her. His gaze lingered too long. He did not stop, but the message was clear. She was seen. She was noticed. That night she made her decision. She approached the cowboy as he sat cleaning his tools. Her steps were steady, though her heart pounded. She stood before him, waiting until he looked up. She spoke slowly, carefully, using the words she knew. If marriage, she said, then paused. No cage. He stood immediately, shaking his head. No cage, he said firmly, I swear. She searched his face, looking for truth. She saw fear there too, not fear of her, but fear of failing her. If married, she continued, I stay by choice. Yes, he answered without hesitation. Always your choice. She took a deep breath. The world had never given her many choices. This one was heavy, imperfect, but real. I agree, she said quietly. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. Instead, he bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect that surprised her. Thank you, he said softly. The next day moved quickly. He rode into town early, leaving her at the ranch with supplies and clear instructions on where to stay. He did not know what kind of reaction he would face. He only knew what he had to do. When he returned, the sun was already lowering. His face showed exhaustion but also relief. It's done, he said simply. Tomorrow, she nodded. That night neither of them spoke much. The weight of what was coming sat heavily between them. This was not a celebration. It was a shield, a promise, a risk. Morning arrived with a strange stillness. They stood side by side as a small group gathered. No music, no joy, just witnesses and words spoken plainly. The woman wore simple clothing, clean and modest. Her hair was braided neatly, a reminder of who she was and where she came from. The cowboy stood straight, his expression serious. When asked, he spoke clearly, without hesitation. When it was her turn, she answered in her quiet voice but with steady strength. The words were spoken. They were now bound by law, though not yet by love. As they left, some people watched with judgment, others with curiosity, a few with anger. The world did not suddenly become kind. But when they returned to the ranch, something had changed. The land felt the same, but the air felt different. He no longer slept outside without reason. She no longer feared every sound quite as deeply. A fragile wall now stood between her and the world. That evening, as the sun sank once more, they sat quietly together, separated by space but connected by understanding. This marriage was not an ending. It was the beginning of a difficult path, one that would test them both in ways they could not yet imagine. And beyond the ranch, the world was already watching. Life after the marriage did not suddenly become easy. In some ways, it became harder. The paper and spoken words that joined them together could not change how people thought or felt. When the cowboy and the Apache woman returned to the ranch as husband and wife, the land looked the same, but the world around them felt heavier. The first change came quietly. When the cowboy went into town to buy supplies, people stared more openly now. Some whispered without shame. Others spoke to him with forced politeness, their smiles thin and cold. A few refused to deal with him at all. He noticed the looks, the sudden silence when he entered a room, the way conversation stopped and then started again once he left. He did not argue, he did not explain himself. He bought what he needed and left. At the ranch, the woman felt the change too, even when she stayed behind. Riders passed more often than before. Some slowed down, curious. Some looked angry. She stayed close to the cabin, her body tense, her senses alert. Even with the marriage, fear did not disappear overnight. Inside the cabin, their life followed careful rules. They shared the space, but not the bed. The cowboy slept on a simple mat near the fire. The woman slept on the bed. He never crossed that line. He never touched her without permission. He spoke to her gently, always asking before making decisions that involved her. This surprised her more than anything else. She had expected control to come after the marriage. She had prepared herself for it. Instead, she found patience. She found respect. That confused her heart. Slowly, they began to talk more. Not long conversations at first, just small words, gestures, shared looks. He taught her English words while working. She taught him how to understand her silences. When she wanted to be alone, he gave her space. When she helped him, he thanked her sincerely. They worked side by side more often now. She learned how to care for the garden, how to help with animals, how to fix small things around the cabin. He noticed how skilled she was, how quick her hands moved, how sharp her eyes were. He stopped seeing her as someone he needed to protect all the time and started seeing her as a partner in survival. Still, the outside world pressed in. One afternoon, a group of townspeople came to the ranch uninvited. The woman saw them first and felt fear rush through her body. Her hands trembled as she stood near the door. Old memories returned quickly, sharp and painful. The cowboy stepped forward calmly, positioning himself between her and the visitors. His voice was steady as he asked what they wanted. The men spoke harshly, questioning his choices, questioning her place there, questioning the marriage itself. He did not raise his voice. "She's my wife," he said simply, "and this is our land." The word "our" landed differently than before. The men argued, tried to push their opinions, but he did not move. He did not threaten. He did not beg. He stood firm, unshaken. Eventually they left, their anger still visible, but their challenge unanswered. After they were gone, the woman felt weak. She sat down, her breath shallow. The cowboy turned to her, concern clear on his face. "They won't touch you," he said quietly. "I won't let them." This time she believed him a little more. That night something changed between them. She noticed how tired he looked, how the weight of standing against the world had settled on his shoulders. For the first time, she understood that the marriage was not only protecting her, it was costing him too. She brought him food without being asked. She sat nearby, not too close but present. He looked at her with surprise, then nodded in thanks. No words were needed. Days turned into weeks. The ranch became a place of routine and effort. They woke early, worked hard, rested when the sun set. The woman began to smile sometimes, small, cautious smiles that appeared when she felt safe. The cowboy noticed each one, even if he did not comment on them. He also began to learn about her past, piece by piece. One evening, as they sat near the fire, she spoke of her people. She did not tell everything, only what she could manage. She spoke of mountains, of songs, of family gatherings under open skies. Her voice grew softer as she spoke, filled with both love and pain. He listened without interruption. When she finished, silence filled the space between them. Then he spoke quietly, telling her about his own past, about losing his parents young, about working from place to place, about loneliness that followed him like a shadow. For the first time, they were not just protector and protected. They were two broken people sharing the same fire. Trust grew slowly, like a fragile plant pushing through hard ground. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It showed itself in small ways, how she no longer flinched when he entered the room, how he noticed her moods without being told, how they shared decisions instead of avoiding them. But the world outside did not forget them. Rumors continued. Some people in town claimed the marriage was wrong. Others said it would not last. A few warned that trouble would come. Trouble did come, but not all at once. One night, the horse grew restless, stamping loudly. The woman woke immediately, fear sharp in her chest. She listened closely, hearing unfamiliar sounds beyond the cabin. The cowboy was awake within seconds. He did not panic. He quietly checked outside, his body tense, his senses alert. He saw movement near the edge of the land, figures watching, not approaching. He stood there long enough to be seen, making it clear he was not afraid. Eventually, the figures disappeared. When he returned inside, the woman was sitting upright, her eyes wide. He spoke gently, explaining that they were gone. He sat nearby until her breathing slowed. That night he stayed inside, sitting against the wall instead of near the fire outside. It was the first night he did not leave the cabin. Nothing happened. Morning came, calm and quiet. After that night she understood something important. He was not protecting her out of duty anymore. He was protecting their life together. The woman began to stand taller when others were near. She stopped hiding as much. When she went into town with him, she walked beside him, not behind. She did not speak much, but her presence alone challenged the way people saw her. Some still stared, some still judged, but a few began to soften. A shop owner greeted her politely. A woman offered her fabric without comment. These moments were small, but they mattered. Inside the cabin, they talked more freely now. Laughter appeared sometimes, surprising them both. It felt strange at first, like something they had forgotten how to do, but it felt good. One evening, as the sky darkened and stars filled the night, they sat outside together. The fire crackled softly. The land stretched wide and quiet around them. "You're strong," the cowboy said suddenly, not looking at her. She looked at him, surprised. "So are you," she replied. Their eyes met and something unspoken passed between them. Not love yet, not fully, but respect, deep and steady. The marriage was no longer just a shield. It was becoming a bond. Still, challenges waited ahead. Prejudice did not disappear easily. The land remained harsh, the future uncertain. But as they sat together under the open sky, sharing warmth and silence, both of them understood that whatever came next, they would face it together. And for the first time in a very long time, that thought did not feel like a burden. It felt like hope. The seasons changed slowly, but their lives changed in deeper ways. Summer passed into cooler days, and the land around the ranch began to look different. The grass dried, the nights grew longer, and the sky felt whiter somehow. With each passing week, the woman and the cowboy learned more about each other, not through big moments, but through quiet, ordinary days. By now, the woman no longer felt like a stranger in the cabin. She knew where everything belonged. She knew how the floor creaked near the door and how the wind sounded before a storm. She moved with confidence, not fear. The ranch had become her home, not because she was told it was, but because she chose to stay. The cowboy noticed this change with a quiet sense of pride. He never said it out loud, but it mattered to him that she walked freely, that she spoke when she wished, that she made choices without hesitation. He had promised her freedom, and he worked every day to keep that promise. Their relationship continued to grow carefully. They still respected boundaries. Trust, once broken in a person's life, takes time to rebuild. But now there was warmth between them. When one worked, the other helped without being asked. When one was tired, the other noticed. They shared meals, shared silence, and sometimes shared laughter that came naturally without effort. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, their hands touched briefly. Both paused. There was no fear in her eyes this time, only awareness. She did not pull away. He did not rush forward. The moment passed gently, leaving something new behind, a quiet understanding. The world outside the ranch continued to test them. There were still those who did not accept their marriage. Some people refused to speak to them. Others watched from a distance, waiting for weakness. But there were also changes that surprised them. A neighbor offered help during a difficult harvest. A shopkeeper greeted them both by name. A traveler stopped at the ranch and spoke to the woman with respect, not judgment. These moments were small, but together they formed something powerful, proof that change, though slow, was possible. The woman began to speak more openly now. She shared stories of her childhood, of learning to gather food, of running freely across open land. She spoke of the strength of her people, of their values, of how they honored the earth. Her voice carried both sorrow and pride. She did not hide her pain, but she no longer let it define her. The cowboy listened always. In return, he shared his dreams, dreams he had buried long ago. He spoke of wanting a life that felt meaningful, not just survivable. He admitted that before she came, he had felt like he was simply passing time, waiting for days to end. Now he woke each morning with purpose. One night as they sat near the fire, the woman asked him a question that surprised him. "Why?" she said slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Did you really help me?" He thought for a long time before answering. "Because," he said finally, "I didn't want to be the kind of man who looks away." She nodded, understanding more than the words alone could explain. As winter approached, challenges grew harsher. Supplies became harder to find. The cold tested their strength. One week the cowboy fell ill, his body weakened by fever. For days he could barely stand. The woman took charge without hesitation. She cared for him patiently, bringing water, preparing food, sitting by his side through long nights. She spoke to him softly, even when he could not respond. She stayed alert, strong, steady. Fear tried to rise in her again, but she pushed it away. He recovered slowly. When he was strong enough to sit up, he looked at her with new understanding. This woman was no longer someone he protected alone. She had protected him too. Their bond deepened into something solid and unbreakable. By the time spring returned, their life together felt natural, not perfect, not easy, but real. The land bloomed again, and with it came a sense of renewal. The woman planted seeds near the cabin, her hands working the soil with care. She smiled as green shoots appeared, symbols of life continuing. The cowboy built a larger table outside, a place where they could sit together and welcome others if they chose. He did not build walls to hide her away. He built space to share. One afternoon, they rode into town together. This time, she did not lower her gaze. She walked beside him, calm and steady. People noticed. Some still judged, but others nodded in greeting. A few even smiled. They had not changed the whole world, but they had changed their corner of it. As time passed, love grew, not loud or dramatic, but deep and steady. It showed itself in patience, in shared work, in quiet nights under the stars. It showed itself in the way they trusted each other completely. One evening, sitting outside as the sky darkened, the woman spoke again. "I am not afraid here," she said. The cowboy felt his chest tighten with emotion. "Neither am I," he replied. Their marriage had begun as protection, as necessity. It had grown into partnership, then into something stronger: choice, respect, and love built on equal ground. The past did not disappear. Pain did not vanish, but it no longer controlled their future. They had built something new together, not by force, not by fear, but by courage and care. As the stars filled the sky, the woman leaned slightly closer to him. He did not move away. They sat side by side, hands resting near each other, sharing warmth and silence. The land stretched wide before them, full of uncertainty and promise. And this time they were ready, together.